Good evening, and here's my post to this week's Muddy Point blog. The videos by Drs. Brown and Veek were very interesting. I think we all have probably considered plagiarism to be ethically and legally wrong in the context of education. But there were some considerations that they mentioned that I had not thought of in the context of education. For instance, the metadata and the security breaches typically is something that I focus on at work, but not so much at school. However, it was great to see how the two are closely related and intertwined. In my interview with Mr. Peer, he did note some challenges with access and e-learning for military students. And for the most part, we limit access in the military through passwords and identification cards and PIN numbers. And so access to the information mentioned by Dr. Brown, such as social security numbers and dates of birth and addresses, that's all protected by the Privacy Act of 1974 when it comes to military members and access. So these things are only accessible by using your personal identification card and your PIN number assigned. As far as school is concerned, the ethical and I guess legal considerations with regard to this access is, and that's why most network infrastructures have certain security measures, is because your role, does it afford you the opportunity to access the appropriate information? And if your role does not, then how are you obtaining said access to the information? So I think for the most part, the way most schools are designed, they kind of filter or firewall your access based on your role as a student, teacher, or administrator, which is very good. Dr. Brown also mentioned hidden information, which I wasn't really focused on in the context of the metadata when it comes to Microsoft Word. I thought that was really interesting because in the military, we're famous for copying and pasting. We call it working smarter, not harder. And to avoid extra work, we will copy, modify, and then paste. But in the context that Mr. or Dr. Brown was talking about, I think it's has given me an opportunity to take a look back and see, okay, you know what, the details that are missed or contained in the document, we may unintentionally be sharing, and that's really not our goal. So that's definitely something that I will consider more, even while I'm a student at Liberty. Dr. Veek talked about the copyright compliance and the amount of violations that take place within the education world. And so that, I guess I really wasn't tuned into because so much focus is placed on citing properly when you submit work products as a student. As far as it did shed some light on as far as resources used, and making sure that I obtained them through appropriate library resources versus just random sites online. So that was very interesting. As far as a military member, there's no muddy waters or unclear issues with regard to how we use it. And the reason why I say that is because we don't see a tremendous amount of violations from members. And the reason is because it's a result of that non-protection status. Dr. Veek spoke about the things that make information or not protected. He talked about facts, ideas, methods, processes, procedures, materials passed through public domains, titles, and things generated by or created by the U.S. government. Well, all of my work products, to include student information that's being taught via distance learning, is all created by the government. So for us, I operate in a world of unprotected information, or well, let's rephrase that. It is protected as far as access, but as far as that status and the connection to copyright, it doesn't fall on the protected category because we deal in a lot of facts, historical facts, and information generated or created by the U.S. government. So, I mean, unless it's confidential, classified, it can be accessed or used. It can be used, not accessed, without permission. And so usually it is, again, to regurgitate some type of practice, process, or some type of historical fact of what took place. Um, Part of the muddy waters for educators, looking forward, could be the use or incorporation of media forms like Dr. Veek spoke of, videos, in terms of excerpts, songs, things like that, poetry, determining if the particular media reference is really necessary to enhance your lesson. Also, did you obtain it from a proper resource? So just making sure that the curriculum information that is referenced is accessed through valid channels versus perceived backdoor public domains is probably going to be a challenge in the near future. For me, adhering to the Teach and Fair Use Act will probably be a challenge when I first start, after I graduate and I get into the teaching community. And the reason is because I love being creative. And a part of creativity for me is trying to find humorous media outlets or ways to engage my students. And in doing so, I might want to incorporate some videos or uh, I won't even say poetry because that's allowed. That's not protected. But even quotes I cite properly. I think it's mainly going to be probably video. I don't struggle with that in the Air Force because we are mandated to use Air Force work product, meaning Air Force generated videos into our curriculum. So we really don't struggle with that on this side of the house. But moving forward in the teacher community as a civilian, I will probably have to rely heavily on the dean of my department or seasoned, tenured professors or faculty members to really guide me and make sure that I have someone review my lesson material prior to, delivering it in class. Other than that, there's great information provided by both doctors in the videos in terms of, like I said, the metadata, the ethical and legal considerations regarding the information that's being obtained, accessed, and shared. So that's it for me.